Before we get into anything else, if you care about historical accuracy, real survival knowledge, and lessons that actually mattered to people who lived through hard times, make sure you subscribe to the Prepper Historian right now. This channel exists to preserve the uncomfortable truths history teaches us, not the Hollywood versions. What we're covering today is one of those truths, and it's one most modern preppers still get dangerously wrong. Most people believe freezing to death is about temperature alone. They look at a thermometer and assume survival is a matter of wearing warm clothes or starting a fire. History proves otherwise. Armies, explorers, refugees and civilians across centuries didn't freeze because they lacked coats. They froze because they didn't understand heat loss. If you miss that distinction, all the gear in the world won't save you. So, let's start with what actually kills you in the cold. You know, cold itself doesn't kill you. Heat loss does, and, well, history just keeps repeating this lesson. Your body is essentially a heat engine. When you're at rest, it produces just enough heat to keep your core at about 37 degrees Celsius. But the moment your heat loss is greater than your heat production, the countdown begins. This isn't just theory, folks. It's physics. And honestly, it's buried more soldiers and civilians than enemy fire ever did during cold campaigns. During World War II, German troops outside Moscow were issued heavy coats, yet, they froze in massive numbers. Meanwhile, Soviet forces, often worse equipped on paper, managed to survive longer. The difference wasn't about bravery or toughness. It was really an intuitive understanding of how heat escapes the human body and, well, how to slow that escape. The Germans focused on insulation alone. The Soviets, on the other hand, paid attention to shelter, movement control, wind protection and ground insulation. Understanding those mechanisms is honestly what separates survival from a slow death. Conduction is why the ground kills faster than the air. Conduction is direct heat transfer between your body and whatever you're touching. The ground, especially when it's frozen or damp, is, frankly, a ruthless heat sink. If you lie down on bare earth at 5 degrees Celsius, your body will honestly dump heat into it faster than most people can imagine. History shows this very clearly in trench warfare. Soldiers didn't just fear bullets, they feared sitting or sleeping directly on the trench floor. Even with coats, the ground just drained them. That's why, wooden duckboards, straw, brush, and even empty ammunition crates were used as barriers. They weren't about comfort, they were about survival. For a modern prepper, this means that sleeping on cold concrete, earth or metal without insulation is really a fatal mistake. A thin foam pad, folded cardboard dry leaves inside a sack or even layered clothing placed beneath you matters more than an extra jacket on top. The first practical step is simple. Never let your body touch cold ground directly, even for a short rest. Convection is why wind makes cold lethal. Convection is heat loss caused by moving air-stripping warmth from your skin and clothing. This is why wind chill exists and why people freeze at temperatures that seem manageable on paper. Historical expeditions learn this lesson the hard way. In polar travel, explorers quickly realized that blocking wind mattered more than piling on furs. Inuit shelters, for example, weren't warm because ice is magical. They were warm because they stopped air movement. Once convection was controlled, body heat accumulated inside the shelter. In practical terms, this means that a poorly sealed jacket in strong wind is worse than a lighter jacket behind a windbreak. A tarp, snow wall, vehicle, building corner, or even stacked packs can dramatically reduce heat loss. One of the simplest survival steps is to stop moving air before worrying about adding layers. Radiation is the silent drain most people ignore. Radiation is heat lost from your body into open space. You don't feel it the way you feel wind or cold ground, but it's always happening. Clear nights are especially dangerous because heat radiates away faster under open skies. History gives us constant reminders of this. Nomadic cultures across cold regions always slept low under cover or near reflective surfaces. Even primitive shelters often placed fire or stone behind sleepers, not just for warmth, but to reflect radiant heat back toward the body. Applying this today can be as simple as, positioning yourself near a wall, piling packs behind you, or using reflective materials like emergency blankets correctly. Evaporation is why sweating kills in winter. Evaporation is heat loss caused by moisture turning into vapor. Sweat, wet clothing and damp air all accelerate this process. Honestly, this is one of the most misunderstood killers in cold environments. Military history is full of warnings about this. Marching hard, overheating and sweating led to rapid hypothermia once movement stopped. Veterans learned to move slowly, vent clothing early, and stay dry even if it meant feeling cold temporarily. For modern survival, the rule is uncomfortable, but, it's absolutely vital. Never sweat if you can avoid it. Adjust layers before you heat up, not after. Change damp clothing immediately. Even small amounts of moisture can undo hours of careful insulation. The hard truth is that most preppers focus on equipment, not physics. They buy heavier sleeping bags but forget ground insulation. They wear expensive jackets but ignore wind exposure. They start fires but sit where heat escapes in every direction. History doesn't reward gear collectors. It rewards people who understood systems. Every successful cold-weather culture mastered heat retention long before modern fabrics existed. If you apply this knowledge step by step, you immediately increase your odds. Insulate from the ground first, block wind second, reduce radiant loss third. Manage moisture at all times. Only then does adding more insulation make sense. In every major collapse scenario in history, exposure killed more people than violence. Refugees froze in barns, forests and abandoned buildings not because they lacked blankets, but because they didn't understand heat loss. That same mistake is waiting for anyone who ignores these fundamentals. If this kind of grounded, historically proven survival knowledge matters to you, subscribe to the Prepper Historian. Share this with someone who thinks a thick jacket is enough. History already wrote the ending for those who don't learn these lessons. Let's make sure we're not repeating it.